All righty. Hello. Welcome to Empowered Esquire TV. I just realized I did my hello like Diva Divine Light. Shout out to Diva Divine Light. Check her out. She does mostly R. Kelly content, but she is a warrior for justice and truth. And she always starts her lives with hello in her cute voice. So, welcome everyone. As you can see by the title, we are discussing Ahmaud Arbery, his passing, and the McMichael and Bryan, the men who are on trial for allegedly causing his death. So, I want to give a big hello to everyone in the chat. I want to go ahead and tell you before we get started that the internet is still interesting, right? And so if at any time you cannot hear me, just give me a big, I guess we'll say number 2 in the chat, right? Just put the number 2 in the chat and I will know that you cannot hear me and I'll reassess, right? So one more time. If at any time throughout this stream you cannot hear me and you think that I'm speaking but you cannot hear me, right? You just put the number 2 in the chat and I will reassess because the internet is still being a bit interesting due to some recent weather. All right. So let me do my little roll call. Hello to Health Light. Hello to Senorita Flowers. Hello to Man King. Hello to Black Skin Media. And hello to everyone else watching who may not be in the chat at this time. Hello, Doug. How are you? Alrighty, everyone. Let me get us a bit of a different ambiance very quickly. I like to give you variety, right? Just because you're not looking at me doesn't mean you don't deserve some degree of variety. So let me do that for you. All righty. Now, let me ask you before I get started, how have you been feeling about this trial thus far? If you've been following the trial, do you think that things are progressing in a fair and neutral and impartial manner? Let me know. Give me your thoughts in the chat. If you think everything is going pretty well with this trial, put a Y in the chat. And if you think there's some issues and you have some concerns, let me see an N in the chat. All right, so I take it that you all haven't been following the trial too closely then. Hello to Midnight Green and hello to Real Julius Kane. All righty, everyone. So I have, per usual, some articles queued up for you that will give us an understanding of what's been happening. And I also have, of course, the applicable law in this case, and we are going to break that down. I have a great kind of step-by-step timeline that was created by CNN. And so we're going to walk through that and I'm going to jump in and give you all the little tidbits of legal insight as we kind of walk through that timeline. Okay. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you so we can start with the timeline. We're going to start with the timeline first. As I said, the timeline was created by CNN. And per usual, we live in a world where you always have to consider where you're garnering your information, right? That is true. And we do that here. But I also want us to know that there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Okay. So if someone has already created a timeline, then we're at liberty to use said timeline, right, within reason, and walk through that timeline with the legal insight that I'm going to provide to you. All right. Okay. So, per usual, I always announce that I'm sharing my screen. Why I do that, I don't know, but I'm going to continue to do it. All right. So, here we are. Jury begins deliberations in the death of Ahmaud Arbery. Okay. Now, here we have just a little snippet explaining that the jury is still deliberating as of tonight and that the charges are malice and felony murder. Okay, so we'll get to the law of that. But right now, we want to walk through this timeline. Okay, and here we have a picture of Ahmaud Arbery. Okay. So here we go. February 3rd, 2020, Arbery is fatally shot. Arbery was shot in a confrontation with McMichaels in the neighborhood of Satilla Shores, outside the city of Brunswick in Georgia's Low Country. Arbery was on a jog, he was known to do, when the McMichaels grabbed their guns and pursued Arbery. The men claimed to be conducting a citizen's arrest of Arbery. Bryan had also joined the pursuit and recorded the shooting on his cell phone. So let's start here. There are many people who have been wondering, okay, citizen's arrest, is that like even a thing, right? And so I have news for you. It is a thing, of course, depending on the jurisdiction, right? Never forget that. Every jurisdiction is different. And so, yes, in some places in our country, oh, Aaron, thank you. Aaron Edwards says my voice is chipping. Everyone, if you can hear me, put a 1 in the chat. Let's see how we're doing. I wonder if we'll have to restart this stream. If you can hear my voice, put a 1 in the chat. Okay, so can you hear me clearly? Okay, Black Skin says it's breaking up a bit. Doug says it's choppy. Okay, so it is choppy. Uh-oh. I wonder if I should perhaps switch the source of. It's strange though, because when I look at my laptop, it says that my connection is, I have a MacBook. And so it'll show you your connection on like this, I guess you could say this cone. And it shows me that I have full bars. I allegedly have full service, full Wi-Fi. So strange. Okay, well now I'm seeing loud and clear. Okay, I hope we remain loud and clear. But if anything, I may end the stream, restart it, right? We'll do whatever we have to do to make it work, okay? All right. So we were discussing citizen's arrest. And I was saying that many people wonder, well, is citizen's arrest even a thing? And yes, it is. Depending on your jurisdiction, citizen's arrest may be permissible where you live. So yes, citizen's arrest is a thing. I do not have a lot of tabs open, Doug. But you know what? I do have some other applications open. Let me close those. Maybe that's what it is. I have some other applications open. Let's see. We're going to try closing those. Y'all, the tech issues is the bane of every content creator's existence. Okay. Alrighty. So, yes. So citizen's arrest could very well be a thing in Glenn County. It is very well possible that it is permissible to conduct a citizen's arrest. Now, per usual, though, even if you are a citizen allegedly conducting a citizen's arrest, you should still have probable cause to be conducting that arrest, which means you should still have some reasonable information which tells you that the person did something wrong. And thus far, we have not heard in this case anyone saying that the defendants had reasonable, say that 10 times fast, information confirming that Ahmaud Arbery had done anything wrong. So citizen's arrest could be legal in Glenn County, but was this in itself a legal citizen's arrest? That is questionable, okay? Let's get back into it. All right, so February 27th, 2020, Brunswick Judicial Circuit District Attorney recuses herself. The day after the shooting, Brunswick Judicial Circuit District Attorney Jackie Johnson recused herself from the case, citing that Gregory McMichael was a former investigator in her office. Wowza. So let me first say this. Kudos to Jackie Johnson. It is good on her that she admitted that she had a conflict and recused herself. Okay, that is a good thing. That is the right thing to do. Investigators, for those of you who don't know, district attorneys' offices tend to have their own investigators. It is the normative standard for a DA's office to have their own investigators. And investigators are usually quite close with the DA and all of the assistant DAs. That is a very close working relationship. So she very well needed to recuse herself, and she absolutely did the right thing. Absolutely. April 7, 2020, second prosecutor recuses himself. Waycross Judicial Circuit Judge Barnhill, who took over the case after Johnson recused herself, sent a letter to the Attorney General's office informing the office of his own conflict of interest. His son worked in Johnson's office and had previously worked with Gregory McMichael on a previous prosecution of Arbery. Aha! Wait a minute now. Everyone, we have to take a moment. Do we all see what we just heard? What we just heard is that one of the defendants had previously investigated Ahmaud Arbery in a prosecution. So in a past instance in which Ahmaud Arbery was prosecuted for something, right? We don't know exactly what. McMichael was one of the investigators in the case. This is absolutely earth-shattering. And I know you're wondering, well, why? Why is it earth-shattering? I'm going to tell you why. If George McMichael investigated Ahmaud Arbery in a previous matter, it is likely that he had enough knowledge of Ahmaud Arbery to have remembered him. And it is possible that in seeing him again on that day, he remembered Ahmaud Arbery from what? The previous prosecution. And he may have been thinking, he may have already had his mind made up as to what kind of person Ahmaud Arbery was based upon the previous prosecution and the fact that Ahmaud Arbery must have been up to no good, right? He may have saw him and immediately thought, I remember that kid. I investigated him. He's up to no good, right? Previous knowledge of someone can create preconceived notions about what they're doing. And unfortunately, if George McMichael, I'm calling him George McMichael, if Gregory McMichael, right, really had kept this previous knowledge in his mind, it is so possible that upon seeing Ahmaud Arbery that day, he instantly thought Ahmaud Arbery was up to no good, even though he didn't see him do anything wrong. That is just human nature, okay? It's not right, it's not wrong, but it's not right, but it's human nature. As Nappy Yankee says, go ahead and like this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed. You may be asking yourself, why should I subscribe? And I have two wonderful reasons for you. One, it's free. And two, you get to share in this amazing knowledge of the law. This is a channel that is all about edifying yourself, teaching yourself, and empowering yourself. And I think you should definitely do that because you deserve it. All right. Oh boy. Okay, so Aaron Edwards says it wasn't brought up during the trial that Gregory McMichael had previously investigated Ahmaud Arbery. That may have been something that the judge decided that the jury did not need to know about. It's very possible the judge decided that the jury might have some preconceived ideas of their own, right, about Gregory McMichael if they knew about that past connection. It's very important for judges to try to maintain the neutrality of the jury. So a lot of the past interactions may have been deemed inadmissible because the judge may have reasoned, well, if we include too many past interactions, it's going to taint the jury. All right. Healthlight says it's so important to be aware about him knowing Ahmaud Arbery. Yes, very, very interesting. But remember, this is if he remembered Ahmaud Arbery. It is possible that he did not remember him. It's possible that maybe he did a lot of investigations and he did not actually remember him. All right, Negus Roselle. Shout out to Negus Roselle and Senorita Flowers, two members of the channel. They are part of the EE tribe. All righty. And Negus says, knowledge is key. Absolutely. All right, let's get back into our timeline here. So now, April 13th, 2020, the case is transferred to a third prosecutor. All right, so now they appoint Atlantic Judicial Circuit DA Tom Durden. May 5th, 2020, video of the shooting surfaces. The 30, I'm on a roll tonight. The 36-second video begins with Arbery jogging down the middle of a street toward a pickup truck stopped in the road. Gregory McMichael is in the bed of the truck while his son is standing near the driver's side door with a shotgun. Interesting. May 5th, 2020, the McMichaels are arrested. Gregory and Travis McMichael were arrested on charges of murder and aggravated assault. Again, remember, we're going to dig into the law after we go through this timeline. May 11th, 2020, a fourth prosecutor takes over. Okay, so now we have yet another prosecutor. Okay. Cobb County DA Joyette Holmes. So apparently, Joyette Holmes stepped up after Tom Durden asked to step down due to lack of sufficient resources. That is an interesting request. Very, very interesting reason to ask to step down from a case, especially when you consider that this case occurred in a rural type of jurisdiction, right? So this case did not originate from a place in which there should have been, right, that we know of, a huge budget or technological implication. So it's really interesting to imagine exactly what sufficient resources Durden would be referring to, because how much resources would you need to properly prosecute this case, especially when you have video in this case? Very interesting. May 21st, 2020, Bryan is arrested. 2 weeks after the McMichaels' arrest, the GBI, which for your information, in case you don't know, the GBI is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. It is the state of Georgia's own little version of the FBI. The GBI arrested Bryan on charges of felony murder and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. Okay. Now, June 4th, 2020, all three suspects are indicted for murder. Okay. 4 months after the shooting, a Glynn County grand jury indicted Gregory and Travis McMichael and Roddy Bryan on malice and felony murder charges in Arbery's death. All right. The men then plead not guilty, which again is par the course unless there's some plea deal involved. April 8th, 2021, suspects are indicted on federal hate crime charges. In late April, federal prosecutors announced that a grand jury had indicted the McMichaels and Bryan on hate crime and kidnapping charges. Interesting. Okay. Suspects then plead not guilty, in federal court. And as we see here, the federal trial has not begun. That federal trial is set to begin in February of 2022. So remember when we talked about the difference between state prosecutions and federal prosecutions? If you are an OG here, this is going to be something you already know. But if you're a newbie, you can be charged for the same thing in two different courts. That is not double jeopardy. So they're being charged by the state of Georgia and by the United States of America. And they will face the USA charges, the Fed charges, in February of 2022. Okay. All right. And then now we have this trial, which began on November 5th. And we know that there is a jury panel of 12 people, one Black member, and 11 white members. Okay. Now, it is stated that the younger McMichael brother took the stand, or excuse me, the younger McMichael took the stand during the trial as the defense's first witness. And he expressed that he really did feel that he was in a life or death situation when he shot Arbery. It is also stated that in her closing rebuttal, the prosecutor, Linda Dunikowski, emphasized to the jury that Arbery was accused of no crime and that the defendants told the police they knew of no crime he committed. Pause. Pause. Let's have a conversation. Remember when we discussed citizen's arrest? And I said, yes, in some places you can do that. But just as with any other arrest, it must have what? Probable cause. Meaning there has to be some reasonable information, right? Some type of somewhat reliable information that these men acquired, which told them that Ahmaud Arbery had done something illegal. Then they could validly say, we are invoking a citizen's arrest. Here we have the defendants themselves admitting that they knew of no crime that Ahmaud Arbery committed. Interesting. However, they then argue that Ahmaud Arbery had entered an under construction home and that he ran when he was confronted. This is allegedly the source of their quote unquote probable cause for their citizen's arrest. And just to the trained ear, it doesn't sound like enough, right? We'll have to see what the jury decides. But simply being in a home that is under construction, you could be curious about what it looks like. A lot of people enter these neighborhoods which are under construction to just look because they're curious, right? And then running when you're confronted by a group of people who may or may not be visibly armed, yeah, that could be just because you're afraid of them, right? So thus far, in my humble opinion, I haven't heard the probable cause for a citizen's arrest. Okay. I'm going to hop in the chat and say hello to everyone. I see we have a question. Aaron Edwards, how come the state and the defense have two different definitions for the same laws? Well, Aaron Edwards, that is because our criminal justice system is an adversarial system. And so the prosecution is going to want to present their, let's say, spin on the law, right? Their interpretation of the law. And then the defense counsel will want to present their interpretation of the law as well. And it is up to the judge to explain the law to the jury in a fair and neutral way so that the jury can make a decision based upon the evidence and not just the argument of the prosecutor or the argument of the defense attorney. All righty. Don Williams Jr., hello, how are you? How you doing? So we now have a timeline, if you will, right, of exactly how it is that things developed in this case. Now, my question for you is, does anyone have any questions for me on anything that we have reviewed thus far, right? Anything that we saw in the timeline, anything of that nature. All right, Doug. Growing up as a child, I remember my mom and I would look into new construction when she was looking to purchase a home. Exactly. It is typical for people to, just out of curiosity, right, go into these neighborhoods where homes are under construction and check it out. Walk around, see the sites, see what the homes look like. That is totally, to my knowledge and in my experience, the norm. And I can tell you that growing up as a child, there was a subdivision right next to mine that was being developed. It was new construction. And we were, maybe 10 or 11 years old? Yeah, about 10, 11-ish. And we would ride our bikes through the new construction neighborhood. We would play through the new construction neighborhood because it was cool. It was interesting. It was different, right? And we weren't up to no good. We weren't up to anything. We were just having a good time. Okay, I see Don Williams is new here. Shout out to you, Don Williams. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are happy to have you here. Okay, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of it, shall we? Let's look at the law here. As you know, the federal trial has not begun yet. So we're not looking at federal law today. We're going to take a look at Georgia state law. So the law that McMichaels and Bryan are facing in this current trial. After we look at the law, we're going to talk about some of the things that weren't allowed to be heard in court, i.e., were deemed inadmissible. And we're going to talk about whether or not that decision was something that, helps or hurts the prosecution, and if that decision was really on par with fairness and impartiality. Okay. Okay, Don Williams would like to know, did this person go onto the property or look from the public? So, Don Williams, to our information, Ahmaud Arbery was running, he was jogging allegedly, and he was going through this under construction property on his route, if you will. Okay. Alrighty, Aaron Edwards has a question about whether or not law enforcement will be prosecuted for contaminating the crime scene. They may or may not, but again, there has to be solid evidence that they contaminated the alleged crime scene, right? And from what we have heard, the initial officer that reported wore gloves. So, I mean, do we have enough? Have we heard enough evidence, I should say, that law enforcement contaminated the crime scene? Let me know. Aaron, if you know some things that we're not aware of, fill us in. Okay, so let's go to the law now. Let me pull that up for you all because I always want to teach you, show you, and share with you how to find the law for yourself. It is kind of like one of my secret dreams. Some people, they have secret dreams of like living in a mansion or riding in a Bentley. I have secret dreams of everyone reading the law themselves. Like I imagine a world where everyone is actually interested in the law, and they actually read and all of these cool things, and they don't just rely on other people to tell them what something says. Imagine that. Imagine a world where people read laws for themselves. Wow, awesome. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so we are here on ga.elaws.us, and this is just the Georgia section of elaws where you can see the laws for pretty much any jurisdiction, right? And here we have the Georgia Code, okay? So I can actually show you kind of the first page before we even get here. So when you're initially just looking at the Georgia Code, right? You see, this is the code for everything in the state of Georgia, right? So you have agriculture, alcohol, animals, aviation, civil practice, commercial practice, contracts, crimes, criminal procedure, debts, domestic relations, education, health, game and fish, local government, nuisance, property, right? So every single thing, torts, wills, okay? This is the Georgia Code in its entirety. Now, what interests us is crimes and offenses. So let's go there. Okay, so now we see here we have, what do we have? A total of 17 chapters. We see criminal liability, we see defenses, conspiracy, theft, fraud, right? All these things. But we are interested in what? Felony murder, right? That's kind of our main interest here. And so these types of crimes in which someone's death is caused, those types of crimes, such as homicide and things like that, are considered to be a crime against the person. So when we see here chapter 5 and we see crimes against the person, we know, aha, that is what we are interested in, right? All right, here we go. Chapter 5. 9 articles: homicide, assault and battery, kidnapping, reckless conduct, cruelty to children, blah, 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 stalking, protection of elders, and notice of conviction for blank. Okay, here we are. So let's click Article 1. And we see here felony murder, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, time elapsed between injury and death, and assisted suicide. Okay. So I'm going to hop in the chat really quick. Hello, that's so Saida. Peace to you as well. Right now, if you're just joining us, we are looking at the actual law that is applicable in this case. The two McMichael's men and Bryan are, Bryan is his last name, right? Yes. And Roddy Bryan, it just feels so strange because Bryan is a first name, are being charged with causing the death of Ahmaud Arbery, in particular, felony murder and malice. Okay, so we are actually in the Georgia Code looking at the statute for felony murder. Okay. All right, here we go. Uh-oh, I think I need some water. One moment, everyone. In the chat, let me know if you have any questions thus far while I sip my tea. My tea got cold, everyone. I totally forgot about it. I was, I got so wrapped up in talking with you that I totally forgot about my tea. Wow, I'm so distraught about it. Okay. So, let's get into it. Felony murder. Here we go. A person commits the offense of murder when he unlawfully and with malice aforethought, either expressed or implied, causes the death of another human being. Okay, so this is murder. This is just the outright requirement for committing murder. So when you see the terms with malice aforethought, that is when someone premeditates, right? Also colloquially referred to as when you plan. So if someone plans to cause the death of another person in the state of Georgia, they have committed murder. Okay, if they plan to cause the person's death, they then do cause that death, it's murder. Express malice is that deliberate intention unlawfully to take the life of another human being, which is manifested by external circumstances capable of proof. Malice should be implied where no considerable provocation appears, and where all the circumstances of the killing show an abandoned and malignant heart. Okay, so as we can see, malice is mentioned in this felony murder. And we can see that the definition of malice is having no considerable provocation, meaning that person doesn't come at you, that person doesn't start a confrontation with you, yet still you cause their death anyway. So in part, the prosecution is alleging that McMichael's, both of the McMichael's men, right, and Mr. Bryan did not have any provocation from Ahmaud Arbery, yet they caused his death anyway. Now, see, we get into felony murder. A person also commits the offense of murder when, in the commission of a felony, he causes the death of another human being, irrespective of malice. Okay, so notice that felony murder does not require malice. Now, let me give you a felony murder breakdown. Okay, let's have a moment. So I know you might be wondering, what is felony murder? What is that? Well, I'm here to tell you, there are many, many, many women and men who are currently incarcerated for felony murder, and they will tell you that they feel that their incarceration is unjust, right? They will tell you that they feel that it's unfair, and I'm going to tell you why. Here is a felony murder example. I'm going to use two random people from the chat. Please don't get offended, okay? Don't get offended. This is not meant to be personal, okay? So, if Negus Roselle and Aaron Edwards decide, you know what? Of course, this is hypothetical, you guys. You know what? We're going to rob a bank. We need some money, and so let's do it. We're going to arm ourselves with these guns, and we're going to rob a bank. We got some masks and some bags, some duffel bags. And they go and rob the bank. Now, Negus Roselle has no intention of killing anyone. You know, he's just thinking, we're going to just commit this bank robbery, we're going to get this quick money, and we'll be fine. And Aaron Edwards, maybe he didn't have the thought, the forethought, right, ahead of time that he would try to kill anyone. Okay. Now, Negus Roselle and Aaron Edwards, they go and they rob the bank. But as they're trying to escape, a security guard decides to lunge towards Aaron. Aaron, he doesn't really, he panics in the moment. He doesn't all the way think it through, but in the moment, he just shoots the security officer, right? Now, security guard is now passed away, right? The security guard dies. That is felony murder. Even though, and by the way, it's felony murder for both Aaron and Negus. Both men are guilty of felony murder. Negus did not pull the trigger. Negus had no plan of killing anyone, but he planned to rob the bank. So when you plan to commit a felony and someone dies while you are committing a felony, you are guilty of their murder. So there are a lot of men in prison. There are a lot of women in prison who plan to rob a bank or sell drugs or whatever with their homies. And the homie killed someone. And now they're in prison. Now on to Aaron. Aaron didn't really plan to kill anyone either, right? The person came at him. He thought that they were going to try to take his gun. None of that matters. None of that matters. It is still murder because Aaron planned to rob the bank. And so anything he did thereafter that caused someone's death, he is responsible for. That is felony murder. So what the prosecution is saying with this felony murder charge is, hey, listen, the McMichaels and Roddy Bryan, they may not have intended to kill Ahmaud Arbery. They may not have had any plan to kill Ahmaud Arbery, but they intended to participate in felonious behavior by riding around in a menacing manner with these weapons and conducting this illegal citizen's arrest. And so because they intended to do that, causing Ahmaud Arbery's death is a felony murder. That is the prosecution's position. Okay? If you get that, if that makes sense, give me a Y in the chat. If you needed me to break it down a little bit more, give me an N in the chat. All right. Hello to Baba Del Rey. All right. Give me a Y in the chat. If you get it, you get felony murder. You're right there with me. Give me an N in the chat if you need more explanation. All right. I see everyone saying, yes, they get it. Hello, B Buccaneer. So everyone, that's felony murder. And as I said, it is controversial because there are so many men and women in prison for life who say that they shouldn't be, that they didn't intend to kill anyone. They didn't pull the trigger. They didn't harm anyone. But felony murder does not care if you intended to kill someone. It's irrelevant. Okay. All right, so let's check out the little last line here. A person convicted of the offense of murder shall be punished by death, by imprisonment for life, without parole, or by imprisonment for life. So those are the potential punishments that we know McMichael and Bryan are facing in this case. So, listen, we've gone through a timeline of this matter. And we've looked at the law here. And so I'm going to give you all a few moments to put in the chat for me any questions you have thus far. If there are no questions, we'll move on to the last piece that I want us to discuss, which is Ahmaud Arbery's past and his criminal record and why those things were deemed inadmissible. All right. Hello to CJ, aka CJ says, oh, let's see. Interesting comment, but I want us to talk about it. So CJ says being white gives them somewhat of a bias as well, I believe. So let's have that conversation. What do you mean by bias? Do you mean the jury is biased, or do you mean that McMichael and Bryan were biased towards Ahmaud Arbery? So clarify that for us, CJ. Who do you think may have been biased due to their race? You think the jury was biased? We would love to know so that we can further discuss. going to take another sip of my tea. And like I said, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. By the way, if you're catching this on the replay, I have not forgotten about you. How are you? Drop your questions in the chat as well. I will answer them. I'm pretty good about being in the comments, answering questions, liking comments, things like that. All right. All right, so CJ says, I think they have a better chance of being acquitted because of their skin color. Okay, so CJ is saying that he thinks that the jury may be biased toward McMichael's and Bryan because they all have the same skin color in common for the most part. For those of you who have forgotten, the jury consists of 12 people. It is a jury panel of 12 panelists. And one panelist is African American, but the other 11 identify as Caucasian. Okay. So let's have this conversation very quickly. Now, is it true? And let me tell you, many people will just outright say that's absolutely false. And I think that's unfair, right? I think the fair thing to do is to have a holistic conversation about this. Are there some people who feel affinity towards their own race, if you will, right? Towards people who look phenotypically the way that they do? Absolutely. There are some people like that. But I'm going to tell you, CJ, I grew up mostly in the South, right? And I have to tell you, per my personal experiences, for every person who may have felt that they had some sort of camaraderie and that they were better than people of color because they were white, right? There were 5 other white people who were totally not that way. And I have experienced more weird moments with people who aren't of color in the North than I have in the South. So is it possible? Yes. But I have a lot more faith in my fellow Southerner, I think, than most. And I'm hoping that this jury will be impartial and will be neutral. And I think that, there's a pretty good chance that they will be, and that we will get an impartial and neutral decision. Okay. All right. Health Light says, do you think the defendant's past history is significant because they are trying to use Ahmaud Arbery's history? So let's talk about that, because they did try to bring up Ahmaud Arbery's history. They tried to bring up his criminal record and his mental health history. And the judge was fair and impartial. And the judge said, no, that is not relevant. And we're not talking about that because Ahmaud Arbery is not on trial. The McMichaels and Roddy Bryan are on trial. By the way, that decision was right on point, right? It is very, very, I should say, prejudicial, right? Which in other words just means confusing and unfair, right? It's very confusing and unfair to talk about a victim's criminal history and a victim's mental health history during a trial, because it will begin to create this atmosphere of the victim being on trial as opposed to the alleged perpetrators. Okay. So let me queue up those articles for you all. I think this is the one. Is this the one that I really liked? It might be. Let's see. Newsweek. Yes. I think this is the one that I really liked. I browse so many articles when I'm prepping for my lives with you all. By the way, did you know that? Did you all know how much I care about you? I prep for these lives. I don't just get on here and start chit-chatting. So, side note, when you see a live rescheduled or when I tell you can't do it today, I prep for these lives. I do not just hop on here and start talking, right? So this is time consuming. All right. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen and show you this lovely article about Ahmaud Arbery's past history. So here we go. Ahmaud Arbery's criminal record and mental health history were accidentally shared with the juror pool. Ooh, that's not good. Although we know it was an accident, because we know that these things were deemed inadmissible. In other words, the judge said it cannot be discussed at trial. Okay? The website of Georgia's Glenn County Superior Court accidentally made suppressed evidence and documents accessible to potential jurors. Ouch. Okay. Okay. Ouch. That's really bad, everyone. That's bad. Now, of course, it was an accident, and we know that, it was not done purposely, but that is bad. And, it does leave room for there to be an argument made that this trial was somehow unfair, okay, because of this leaked information. That's bad. Okay, here we go. If the jury candidates see the suppressed evidence, they may become ineligible. Okay, that makes sense. The judge said the evidence is inadmissible, i.e., it cannot be heard in court, which means that if one of these jurors saw it, then they're no longer impartial, right? They're no longer clear to sit on the jury. The documents, come on now. The documents include details of Arbery's mental health and past criminal history, of which a judge has ruled as inadmissible in court. Remember why? Because it is what? Confusing and unfair to start discussing Ahmaud Arbery's mental health and his past criminal history when the people who are on trial is McMichaels and Bryan. Now, walk that a step further because I love to encourage critical thinking, right? So, not just surface level analysis. Now, walk that a step further. Remember that McMichaels and Bryan were allegedly participating in what they called a citizen's arrest, right? But they did not actually see Arbery do anything illegal. Now, I assure you, what they wanted to do was get Ahmaud Arbery's past criminal history admitted in court so they could use his past criminal history to justify why they were completing the alleged citizen's arrest. One more time. We know that McMichaels and Bryan did not actually see Ahmaud Arbery do anything wrong that day when they were completing their alleged citizen's arrest. So almost assuredly, their attorneys wanted to discuss Ahmaud Arbery's past criminal history to use it as the reasoning for their clients trying to complete the citizen's arrest that day. Make sense? Okay, but it was deemed inadmissible, so they weren't allowed to discuss it. Okay, someone says the audio is messing up again. How am I now? Going once, going twice. If you can hear me clearly and not robotic, give me a 1 in the chat. If I am still robotic, give me a 2 in the chat. Okay, everyone says I'm better now. This is so strange because, as I said, when you look at my laptop for my signal strength, it says that my single, you all, when you talk for this long, for 48 minutes, you get tongue tied. It says that my signal strength is excellent. This is so strange. Anywho, yes. So Don Williams says, but how would they know this history to try to argue it? Well, remember, George McMichael allegedly investigated Ahmaud Arbery before. Remember that? So again, it goes back to, did he remember Ahmaud Arbery? Did he? Did he see Ahmaud Arbery and already have thoughts in his mind about what kind of person he is and that he's up to no good and et cetera, et cetera? Okay. So the documents include details of Arbery's mental health and past criminal history, both of which a judge had ruled as inadmissible. The documents also include evidence whose admissibility is still under consideration. Such evidence includes how often the McMichaels used their firearms and the Confederate flag vanity plate on Travis's truck. Interesting indeed. Very, very interesting indeed. So, we have gotten some insight into how it is that the judge in this matter has been conducting, right, this case. We see that things that would have been, prejudicial towards Ahmaud Arbery were discounted, right? Were deemed inadmissible. And I think fairly so, right? It is absolutely an impartial and fair decision to make to say, yeah, we're not going to have people discuss the victim's past criminal history in this trial about his death. Okay. So I am King Sosa. How are you? I don't think I got the chance to say hello to you. How are you? Confederate flag. Yes. Allegedly, there was a Confederate flag um, plate. I guess, what did they call it? Vanity plate? Is that what they called it? On the McMichael truck. But again, I got to tell you, as a girl raised in the South, the Confederate flag does not mean that someone has, prejudicial or racist mindset. A lot of people have family members who fought for the Confederacy, and they don't really have any connection to, let me say this, they don't have a personal connection to prejudice or racism, but they rather see the flag as something that represents the memory of their family members who were lost, right? So, do some people use it with racial intention? Probably so, but not all, not all. And as I said, I always encourage critical thinking and making sure that we're keeping an open mind. It is so important not to paint with a broad brush, because we don't want, as people of color, to be painted with a broad brush, right? So I always say, let's attempt not to do that to others as well. I live by the do unto others as you would have them do unto you mindset. All right. Okay, so um are there any questions? We are rounding up our time here discussing Ahmaud Arbery. Are there any questions? If you have any, put them in the chat. If you don't have questions, I want to have a combo with you about this pending verdict. What do you think? Do you think that this verdict is going to be a guilty verdict, or do you predict a not guilty verdict in this case? What is your prediction? And if you're catching this on the replay, I'd like to know your prediction as well. What do you think? Guilty or not guilty? Drop your prediction in the chat. Hello, Black Anonymous. It's okay. You can just run it back and you can just drop your, oh my goodness. I had to go mute because Mac is, you hear him? Never do we have a live without our mascot, Mac. Mac, come on. Mac, please, please. Shh, shh, shh. Mac, be considerate. I'm live. Thank you. Okay, so, oh goodness, he will not stop. All righty, he finally calmed down. You all, if he hears an animal moving outside, if he sees anything going on through the window, he's just going nuts. My big protector here, all 5 pounds of him is going to totally protect me from anyone that's trying to come in. Oh my goodness. So yes, I already said shout out to Black Anonymous, right? Everyone check out his YouTube channel. And Doug has an interesting comment. He says, I agree with the Confederate flag. And it doesn't always associate with racism. I've also been told that it represents heritage. Okay. Now, Goose Roselle's vote is guilty. Black Anonymous says he thinks that Travis will definitely be found guilty. Real Julius Kane, can you imagine having the money to fight a high profile murder case in state court than fight in a federal court? I can only imagine. I mean, these charges are going to cost them so much money. And a lot of people don't realize that. So a lot of people think you face a trial, you're found not guilty, you're done. Remember how much money these attorneys cost. So everyone, even people who are ultimately acquitted of these types of charges, they live with this forever. First of all, they have the dark cloud over them, right? Because even though they're acquitted, there are always going to be some people who think you're guilty, right? A la OJ Simpson. Remember, he walked around with that dark cloud forever. And then you also have the financial implication because it costs sometimes hundreds of thousands to defend yourself in these cases. Doug says guilty. Don Williams says guilty. Roger Sherman the second, how are you? Guilty. Aaron Edwards says guilty AF. Two. Uh-oh. We're having some some audio issues again. Uh-oh. I hope it gets better. At this point, we're rounding it up, so we're just gonna go ahead and dip on out. Um, hello to Rockin' with Hello to Rockin' with the Truth. All right, how are you? Yes, catch us on the replay. Oh, a puppy. Yes, Don Williams Jr. I have a 5-pound Yorkie. Well, I'm being nice by saying 5 pounds. He's actually 4 and some change. Who thinks that he is a Rottweiler? Okay. King Sosa says, "Let Mac speak his truth." Mac is something else. Doug on the job. Mac on the job protecting his mama. Yes. Roger Sherman says, literally one of my favorite channels on YouTube. Roger Sherman, thank you. I am honored by that. For real, for real. Thank you so much. It means the world to me. All right. And Rocking with the Truth says guilty. All righty, everyone. So listen, it is 9:01. I'm gonna go ahead and head out. You know, we're edging up upon my bedtime, and I'm sure Mac is ready for me to shut it down as well. So listen, it has been, of course, yet another riveting discussion with all of you. Thank you so much to everyone who's been hopping in the chat, participating. You really make this worthwhile. You know, I really enjoyed this time with you. And I love to see that we are having intelligent discourse about these cases. Rest in peace to Ahmaud Arbery. My heart goes out to his family and friends. My condolences on their loss. Okay. Alrighty, so here on Empowered Esquire TV, we empower you and arm you with legal knowledge. I hope you feel powerful and amazing because you are. All right. And until next time, love yourself. You are all you need. And if you really, really, really need someone else to love you, I love you. And I hope that's enough. See you soon.